understanding is that in your role, you've been leading a couple of cultural fit interviews.
Yeah.
How many did you do, roundabout?
Oh, that's a good question. More than 100, I would say.
Wow. Okay.
So
nice. So this is the reason why we're talking to you today, cultural fit interviews. Like the engineers that we're working with, they all have this one question, like once I've passed the technical interviews, there's this ominous culture fit interview. What is it like, and what do I have to do to survive it? So maybe just as a first question, can you give us a very brief overview of the interview process and where does the culture fit interview come in?
Yeah. So what we did in GetYourGuide and what we also now do at Sharpest is that we typically start with very low barrier types of interviews, phone screen, easy, relatively short, to get a first understanding of, do we and the applicant have the same understanding of the role? And once that's sort of checked, you move on to essentially several interviews where the applicant gets to know the different team members and the process in which the team works, and obviously the team should understand, does the applicant have the right skills and the right motivation, and is there a team fit? Team fit means, do I really believe that this person will add value to our team, and do we feel like we want to work with this person day in, day out?
Okay, and those are basically the technical interviews, yeah?
Technical interviews, obviously with some personal questions as well, but in a nutshell, to assess the technical fit of the applicant. And then comes the sort of cultural fit interview as one of the last steps.
Okay.
What we at GetYourGuide also had after that is always an exec screen, so where the applicant would interview with one of the co-founders of the company.
Okay, got it. Okay, but now let's simply assume that there's a culture fit interview and that you're doing culture fit interviews for engineers, right? And what do you know about the applicant once they arrive at your doorstep, basically? Do you know any scores, any technical scores, any questions that you're supposed to be asking them? So there's different tools that companies use to sort of share the information about the applicant throughout the process. And so what you know is sort of questions that have been asked before and sort of strengths and weaknesses as they are assessed by the other interviewers, which is very helpful. And you also know, obviously, the CV of the person. What I would always do before interviewing someone is to have a good look at that person's CV and write down a few questions of things that I find noteworthy. Not necessarily just bad things or things, there's a hole in the CV, that's not necessarily even a problem. But anything that's not the standard, I would make a mark and just follow up to understand sort of what's happened there and just get some reasoning. Cool. All right, and then can you describe us a picture of a successful candidate? Like how do people look like or behave like who make it successfully through the culture fit interview? Yeah.
In a nutshell, it's when you have a good understanding of the person's motivation, that's always very helpful. So when someone's able to very clearly tell me why we should hire you and why you are the right one for this job. When that comes across in a clear, concise and oftentimes in a fun way, that's a good sign. So I always try to put the applicant into a position where there is some degree of comfort, right? It should be an easy conversation rather than a very formal interview.
Got it.
So also for the applicant, I think it's important to realize that this is not just a one-way conversation, but also for the person, for you to get an understanding, do I really feel like I can work with the person's interviewing me? So just kind of relax and see it as a conversation.
Cool, thank you. And what can you give us like one or two typical questions that you are asking to the candidate?
So to start off with, I would always ask about a brief summary of what you've done before. So there, I'm not looking for the summary of the bullets in the CV, but I ask specifically for what's happened between the bullets. Why have you moved from there to there? There's always no right or wrong answer. But it really boils down to explaining sort of your journey, and that the better a person is able to do that, the better also the ability to self-reflect in a way.
Interesting. Okay, so self-reflection is important. Communication, clarity, establishing a good relationship with you, giving you a positive feeling about the person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to clarify, do you talk about technical details, engineering aspects at all, or?
So what I not in depth, but I oftentimes ask for things that are somewhat related to the area of expertise of the applicant, and I don't necessarily have an understanding of, but I just want to know, is this person able to communicate also the technical bits to a broader audience, so clear communication. So I would ask for, a backend engineer, can you maybe explain to an elderly person in the street what object-oriented programming is?
Okay. Fascinating.
So, this is just explaining it to a technical peer is one thing, but then explaining it to a random elderly person in the street is another thing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, and then maybe as a final question, maybe some parting advice. So, can you maybe start first off with something not to do, and then we end on one thing that you advise the people to explicitly do in this culture fit interview? What's a screw up that you've seen happening?
Yeah, so don't try to invent things that you haven't done. There's a good reason why you are invited, and if everything has been sort of as you have pointed out in your application, there's good chances that the company actually is really interested in you. So there's no reason why you should invent anything that's not on there. And also, don't invent any stories. It always comes out. You always act somehow weird if things are not exactly as you have experienced them. So that's a clear don't. And be confident about the things you've done. Everybody has lived a very unique life, and companies appreciate that. What you should always do is to, I had something I think quite good. Yes, always ask questions, not just for the sake of doing that, but do your homework and try to really ask yourself questions that you would want to ask in order to really assess, is this a company I would want to work for? Are these people that I would want to work with? And that's a unique opportunity you have, and definitely take advantage of it.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Cool.
All right.
That was helpful.
Thanks, Fabian.
Thank you.
All the best.